Hello and welcome to another Debating Europe Citizens panel hosted by me, Joe Litobarski. I'm the editor-in-chief of Debating Europe, and I'm joined here today by a panel of citizens and civil society representatives to discuss the role of digital in the new social contract. And I'll set out the terms and I'll explain what we mean by all this in a moment. But first, maybe I can ask the panel to introduce themselves. I've got you all up on my screen in a kind of grid, so I'll start with Sophie. If you could just introduce yourself and then we'll go around Milan and then Fotios.
Yeah, so I'm Sophie and I am currently a student in Belgium and also I'm from Belgium as well.
Welcome, Sophie. And Milan.
So hello, my name is Milan. I'm from Slovakia and I'm currently also a university student here at Bratislava, the capital. So.
Fantastic. Welcome, Milan and Fotios.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fotios. I'm from Thessaloniki, Greece, and I graduated from my university last year. I'm currently involved in local politics and the European Union think tanks.
Fantastic. And I have, I think I've run focus groups with all of you. We've discussed different topics, like either we were talking about food with some, or digital, or life in lockdown, and so on. And we'll get into some of these topics now. So I said the topic of the discussion is the social contract in digital. So maybe some terms. So social contract, the way that we see it at Friends of Europe, it's the kind of the agreement that we all have. It's not necessarily written down. It's just how we think about the roles and the responsibilities of individuals, of families, communities, the state, private sector, and international institutions like the EU over the course of our lives. So it's what do we expect? You know, if I need help, if I need support, who can I expect to get it from? And who should I be expected to help in response? It's like, how do you, in very technical language, what should be left to the individual and what should be collectivized either through, state, through different social institutions, should it be left to the market? Should it be left to other actors? These are sort of social contracty questions to me. It's a bit ambiguous, but as we get into it, hopefully it becomes clearer. And I think digital is a really interesting topic to link to this because I've done a lot of reading on the social contract. Lots of books have been published about it. Manoush Shafiq, who's the director of LSE, she published a fantastic book called What We Owe Each Other. And one of the things that she said in her book is digital has been undermining our social contract. Okay, so through automation, for example, through potentially in future through artificial intelligence, but also through being, the just alienation and a kind of atomization of being online. And if I was in a focus group with any of you talking about life under lockdown as the experience of students, as we went into the pandemic and everyone shifted online and classes shifted online and everyone's like, what's happening? Is the world ending? And suddenly our life is, reduced to these kind of virtual seminars and everyone's trying to kind of continue life as normal, but digitally. And that had a social impact. It had an impact on mental health. It had an impact on, all sorts of, poverty, exclusion, and so on. So that's part of it. But on the other hand, on the side of the coin, digital has amazing potential, right? For connectivity, for creativity. The fact that we're talking like this, each in different countries, we're able to have this debate and this discussion is because of digital. So I think these are the topics I want to hear from you about. This is what I want to talk about today. And maybe I'll start us off with a comment that we got from a focus group, and then I'll get your reaction to see if you can identify with this. So this was sent in from Mariana from Slovenia. We ran a focus group like this, all online. And she said, when the pandemic hit, it was almost, she said, she thought, oh my God, yes, I get to work from home now. She says, I had to travel an hour and a half to go in to work and then an hour and a half to come back every day. Okay, 3 hours a day. And then lockdown came. And I said, oh my God, yes, I will work from home. Luckily, I will have to work from home. And I had to adjust. But the internet connection here is very bad, awful. And now I'm on my phone to make sure that the connection is okay because I cannot rely on my land connection. She was actually using data on her phone. And that kind of tension is the tension I'm interested in, like the convenience of digital, but also the the difficulty of it. And you were all students, I think, during the pandemic, or are students, or were. Can you maybe we can kick off, and I'll start with maybe I'll go in reverse order. So I'll start with Fotios. Like, tell us a bit about your experience with digital as a student when the pandemic hit. Did you find it easy to kind of make the switch, or was it, was it the internet was terrible, you couldn't connect, your teachers didn't know how to use the lecturers didn't know how to use the system, and was it a painful experience, or was it a positive one?
Thank you. I would like to start that before the pandemic hit, I mean, just the day that it hit in Europe, I was abroad on vacation. So I thought, oh my God, yes, I get to have 1 more week or 2 more weeks of vacation. But then I soon realized that the borders were closing, that I had to go back home, be with my family and see what is going to happen. So at the beginning, it was fun. But after some days, we all realized how severe the situation was, and still is. So of course, we had difficulties. The internet was slower. Everybody had issues. I think the government was suggesting that people should not be using some like heavy internet materials when during morning, so that people could work from home, and pupils could attend their classes and schools. So it was a mess for everybody. But to be honest, I had also some similar experience with Mariana, the girl that you were referring before. Because I live in a city, but I live like a few kilometers outside of the university. So I had to drive the car, then take the bus, and then walk a bit to my university as well. So once the pandemic hit and all the lessons were online, at least I got out of this hustle, and I would just connect like 2 or 3 minutes before the class, and then I would be already home once I would finish the classes.
That is amazing. What you're describing, but particularly when you talked about how the government asked people not to download big files during, office
exactly.
hours. That's internet rationing, basically. That is very social contract. I love that tale. Thank you. Speaking. Oh, I think we've got another participant joining us, another panelist. So Gaia has just joined. I'll let her log on. I won't kind of put her on the spot because she's just come into the Zoom. So meanwhile, maybe I'll move on to Milan. I'll bring in another comment first, Milan, from Theodora from Romania. This is about education, which is why I'm going to bring it up to kind of append to what Fotios has just said. So Theodora said, my parents are both teachers, and imagine being in an apartment with 2 teachers and other students, that's my sister and myself, and being able to connect at the same time. And, my parents are trying to give a lecture, and it's horrible because it's freezing or I'm not able to connect, and I'm being kicked off, and we're all, so that's kind of rationing inside the house, right? They're each trying to use the internet all at the same time, 2 students and 2 teachers fighting over the internet connection. So same question to you, Milan, like, what was your personal experience? Was it kind of more positive, more optimistic, or did you also find challenges?
Well, thank you. I would just like to mention that I had similar problems for a while, because during the first wave, let's call it, in spring 2020, I went back home as most of the students here in Bratislava, and we live in quite a remote location, so the internet connection is not really strong or stable there. And since I have a younger brother who also went online, it was a bit problematic. But luckily, during this spring semester, like, no one really knew what was going on. No one really knew what to do. So the teachers were just sending us assignments that we were doing, like, instead of normal education. But still, like I said, internet problems. Yes, we had very little rationing, because, as you said, I really like that word. My dad still worked like in the fields because he's a journalist, so he had to go out a lot, and we're sometimes even worried, like, what if he catches COVID and brings it home? Mom went online with her work, and brother too. So yeah, it wasn't really sustainable for us. So I moved back to Bratislava in September 2020, and I've been here ever since. but it was really problematic the next year or last winter, because there was no one here. I got accommodation here in the campus, but I was like almost alone here, and I felt that isolation. So yeah, I don't want to live through it again.
We got it. Yeah, we had, this came out from the focus groups that we ran very, very strongly. The sense of kind of, when you go to university, there's a social aspect, a really strong, like connecting with people, talking with people, and overwhelmingly people were like, you don't get that online. You don't get the personal. I think we've all kind of coped a little bit. We've learned how to do little things, but it's like trying to cheat, you don't get the social interaction that you get online in person. You don't get the social interaction in person that you get. Wait, no. You know what I mean? It's the quality of the interaction is not as
exactly high. I mean, I missed an Erasmus due to that. I probably missed out on a lot, and it also made me thinking about quitting, maybe having a gap year or two, and then maybe returning. But now I'm in the last year, so I just want to finish that. So,
and this happened to a lot of people as well. Mm-hmm. There was, I don't know if you guys have been following something called the Great Resignation. This idea that people just, a lot of the pressure. I mean, lots of different reasons behind it. I think there's a lot of it's not kind of monocausal. There's lots of reasons for it to happen, but one of them I think was the people were just so stressed from having to move online and the kind of the pressures of it. I mean, someone said, Fotios said, that he would log, like his transport time, right, to get to lessons was 2 minutes. You log on, you're in the lesson, you log off, you're gone. But that time was also time that we spent to think and to not constantly be on, It's time that's built into your day. Yes, it's annoying, but it's also time that you're not constantly having to be engaged. And so I think it's stressed a lot of people out, the digital. And this is what I want to talk about. The kind of opportunities of digital, but how you make it social. How you don't lose the kind of the social interaction. Let's bring in, we've got two other panelists, let's bring them in. So Sophie, what about yourself? Did you have a more kind of optimistic experience of everything going digital, or was it also kind of challenging?
Well, I would say in the beginning, it was very, very challenging because I was actually on Erasmus when it all happened. So I had to come back early. So that was a bit sad. Then I had 1 semester of online classes where there were a lot of security issues, as in bots coming into it. Teachers did not know how to protect the online rooms and stuff. Then I also had an internship online, which was even more challenging because I literally I only saw the people in my organization once in the 4-month period. So that was very sad. But then after, because still 1 year after, we were still in a sort of online environment for school. I really got used to it. And I have to say, in Belgium right now, or in my school at least, it's obliged for teachers to still video record their classes. So everything can still be online. So you basically have the choice. If you want to go to school, you can, but you don't have to. You can still follow it from home. However, I've seen here that many students still prefer actually to stay at home. So that's something that for me, I really want to go to school because of the extra layer. And like you said, even transport time, yes, it takes me sometimes 1.5 hours to get back, sometimes an hour if it's good traffic, but I've learned to appreciate it more because with that time you can de-stress. And like you just said, with the digital element, you did not have that. You have to be constantly present. And also I feel like nowadays people expect you to always be online and always be responsive. While before that was a bit less. And that's something I find very annoying as a consequence of this digital age, that you're expected to know everything and to constantly respond to everyone. And that's some of the challenges I feel like after this whole thing, we will still be facing for a long time as well.
Yeah, there are constantly little pings and notifications going off all the time.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a meeting like this, for example, I've turned them off so my colleagues can't notify me, but you'd have little, hey, are you in it's just little chats and notifications. There's lots of demands on your attention. That's very interesting. You did talk, I'm glad that you brought in the positive side as well, that some people are getting used to it and enjoying the kind of convenience of it, because I think that is important. Like there are good things. I don't want to be totally down on digital like some cranky old man. Like, no, there's good things about it too. And also the part you talked about, how teachers are struggling with bots coming into their Zooms and they don't know how to protect their online room. I think that's really important. And there are two sides to digital, right? There's the infrastructure, the tools, the kind of physical tools, but then there's the skills, like the people who use the digital. And that's as important, because you could have the most amazing tool in the world, but if people don't know how to use it and they can't stop bots coming in and disrupting the class, it's useless. So I think these kind of two elements, like how do we get used to using these digital tools, but how do we also invest in the infrastructure? I think these are really interesting questions. I'm going to bring in the last panelist though. Gaia, hello. Maybe you can introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you the same question. But first, like, who are you and where are you calling from?
Yeah, so hi, and I'm really sorry for being late. I was just returning from my work as a teacher, primary school. So yeah, I'm Gaia. I'm from Slovenia. I no longer study, and yeah, I work as a teacher. And yeah, that's it.
That's wonderful, Gaia. I'm so happy to have you here. No, welcome you very much. And also because we've got 3 students, Sophie and Milan are currently students. Fotios has graduated last year. So having your kind of experience as an educator, I think that's really, really interesting, because I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked to them, which is, how did you find the transition? Were you teaching when the pandemic hit and everything went online? And if so, how did you find that?
No, so I've been a teacher since last November 21. So I had when I started, there was a lot of quarantine. So there was a lot of like teaching through Zoom. Primary school kids. I think that mostly it was less efficient than the class, because it was less efficient if your criteria is all the kids are paying attention, because you don't have exactly the overview of the entire room, like what's everybody doing? Are they like lost in their own world? Are they actually present? So from that perspective, it's easier. On the other hand, there might be some hours that it was easier on Zoom, just because we wasted less time on the kids talking to each other, because they couldn't talk to each other. So it was quieter. We did occasionally get more done, because like I didn't have to tell them like, please repair your mask, put it over your nose, please sit down again, no, do not talk to your friends. So like there was like a lot of that was like removed. But no, in general, I think it's better if you have it in class. It's more active for the children. It's harder for them to like just, their attention to go away. So no, I think it's better.
But that's really interesting. So like in some, how to articulate this? It sounds like that. So focus was maybe better with, it was. Okay, no, maybe. No,
it was less noisy if it was on Zoom, but it's harder to check if they're actually all listening.
Interesting.
Because maybe they're just muted and you don't even see all the faces.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, maybe this kid learned absolutely nothing.
That's fascinating.
And I have no way of checking.
Yeah. So, I'm going to let me bring in another comment from a focus group. And we've talked a little bit about social encounter, experiences and mental health and so on. And this is from Nikki, she's a student from Germany. I ran a focus group with her, and she said, since the pandemic hit, it's like 24/7. I'm in love with my computer, because I just spend all of my days in front of my computer. I spend a lot of hours in front of the computer, either talking to people or working on different things. But yes, without it, I'd be very lost. And this was even more intense during the pandemic, because you were locked down in your apartment, you couldn't get out. The computer was like a window into the world. But like, I guess, maybe I'll just put this to the group. So anyone who wants to come in, you can just put your hand up, or you can wave in the mic, in the camera, and I'll bring you in. But asking it kind of generally to the group, do you think we're used to in digital interactions after like 2 years now. We've learned how to socialize online, and or do you think that actually we're just storing up like huge problems? I don't know. Like, is it a problem that Nikki is 24/7 in love with her computer and is using it constantly? Is that an issue, Milan?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify, I might be biased maybe because even before the pandemic, I spent a lot of time on my computer. I played video games, watched movies there, even worked like remotely as a translator or, made subtitles, whatever. But what I observed is, what's going on. It's like with my parents, because before you couldn't like spot them both like relaxing or, taking their time off in front of a computer or in front of a tablet or phone. But now even my mom, she like signed on Facebook. So she wasn't on Facebook before, and they are they started to even read newspapers online, despite having subscriptions for normal classical newspapers. So it is a change that I've observed, but I don't know if it's just a phase or if it's like happened to more of you that you've just gone online. But yeah, my observation.
That's interesting. I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I have a confession to make. I think that the danger of internet, for me at least, was that finding amusement on the internet or just like scrolling down social apps, it's so much easier than other forms of relaxation. Like taking a book or, having a walk or something. So I think that this time was really bad for us who have like weak willpower, and we're like tended to, go for the easy thing, even though like I'm well aware that, it's better to have some sort of quality relaxation. And just because everything was online and because you already were sitting at a computer, you were already doing something for work, and then you're just like, oh, let me relax a bit. I'm like, but it's not like, I mean, everything in moderation, but like, I really understand your parents, because like, if that happens to older people, of course, it also happens to younger people who are already so used to and not like anti internet, so.
That's very interesting, and like I really like that point. I think it's a really interesting one, and it gets to, because sometimes after a long day you're just like, I could read a book or I could just scroll through social media, and it's so much easier to just scroll meaninglessly through social media, and the book is hard, but it, that it would be better to pick up that book and to go through it properly and have a kind of a more a kind of in-depth narrative or whatever,
especially since after you scroll for 30 minutes you're like, okay, what did I get from it? Like, yeah. Okay, there were 3 good jokes and I read like 10 titles of news articles, but like, was it really valuable? So yeah.
Well, let me bring in another element, and this builds off what Milan was saying. So Milan's parents have clearly adapted to digital very well, and they've been like digitalized by the pandemic, but not everyone is, and this is this issue. So this is from Jose Luis, who's from Spain, and he's in his 60s, and he says it's extremely, he lives in a rural area. So he lives in rural Spain. Connectivity is not good in his village. He says it's like having a tin can with a string between, like it's very poor. And he also says digital skills are really bad, particularly for older people. So he says in his village, it's the average age is much higher as well. The young people have gone to the city where they've got good internet speeds and they're all scrolling social media. And I'm stereotyping, but there's something in this. And he says it's extremely unfair to leave a considerable percentage of the population outside of the wall, not just because of the skills that they don't have, but also because they don't have the means. They don't have laptops, they don't have probably a smartphone and so on. And in many cases, particularly in rural areas, remote areas, in the mountains and rocky areas, there's not even any signal. So sometimes this is called the kind of digital divide. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Maybe Fotios or Sophie, do you want to come in on like, is it are you either of you concerned about people being left out? So people being kind of left behind by digital, or do you think that's that's exaggerated? Fotios.
Thank you. And that's actually a pretty well-targeted point because at least here in Greece, like older generations were not so digitally literate. The good thing is now that everything is digitalized, because before we had a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of procedure, and which would take a lot of time. So for someone like me, for example, it's easier, it's better, it's faster, and I don't have to get out of my house either. But for someone like an older person, like, because I experienced that with my grandparents also, is that they did not have access to laptops, and they did not have access to some certain platforms because they did not have like a modern mobile phone. They had the old ones with the buttons. But thank God, like the government thought about that, and they also hired some people to try to have some appointments with the older generations, like digital appointments, of course, but through phone or like with internet to those who knew. So they could try to make them more knowledgeable about what they can do about the main platform that we mainly use now in Greece, which is connected with everything. Also, a good step was that one of some certain NGOs located here in Greece, that they organized some seminars now that restrictions are not so harsh. Is even some webinars before that people could attend, so they could get more knowledgeable about digitalization and how they could use social media, but not just for fun, but also for their work, which I find really interesting. For people with limited knowledge to get even more accustomed to the new world order.
Fotios, that's perfect. That is exactly the topic that I wanted to talk to you all about, which is, so when I talked about the social contract, what do we expect from the private sector, from the state, from like, if we identify a problem like the digital divide, whose job is it to close that digital divide? Is it education systems? Because education systems, I mean, Gaia will know, educators are being asked to do everything. They've got to get people, you've got to give people critical thinking skills. They've got to give people, digital skills. They've got to kind of digital literacy, critical thinking, like all these like different things that we're kind of heaping on educators. You have to prepare people for everything. Is that fair? Maybe there should be, other actors involved in this process of closing the digital divide. And you just identified two of them, Fotios, NGOs, government, for example. And this comes to, it links maybe to a question from Oliver, a comment from Oliver from one of the focus groups, who says, digitalization needs to be a thing that needs to be pushed by the European Union, needs to be brought on the way. We need to have good internet connections everywhere in Europe. Being in Berlin or a big city, it means you're lucky. If you're somewhere in the countryside, you're probably, this is the quote, you have 2 tin cans and a wire in the middle, that's it. So his argument is, okay, it's going to need massive investment, and the private sector is not investing. And so you should have kind of the European Union or member states coming and kind of investing in infrastructure. And then the flip side of that may be, how do we kind of train people? How do we give people the skills? That's a good question. Sophie, so you talked on skills again. You talked about how your teachers were at first, the lecturers were, having their Zoom classes interrupted by bots and so on. Did that stop over time? Did they learn the digital skills as the years went on? Are they now like really, really good at kind of keeping the bots out, or is that still a problem?
Like that was my previous school, and I would say like in the beginning of the semester it happened, and at the end of the semester the police even had to get involved in some of the things. So no, it did not get better over time. But the thing is, they did get the resources from the school, which was like a document they could read. But then us students, we also like found the document, and we still had to tell the teachers like, yeah, you can close the room. You can only let people in with like the certain email address and everything. So it's not like the material was not there. They had the material. They just did not have the time, or they did not think of it to do it. So in that aspect, yes, there could be some improvement here and there. But then to refer back to like the role of the government in like a broader perspective on like aging people, because I wanted to say something about that too. I would say that the government really should also have more options there for like still having it the way older people like to do it, but then also like education systems as well. Because here in Belgium, for example, there are already classes for older people, like how to navigate through Facebook or how to set up an email account and stuff like that. So I think these things are very valuable, but then again, same as with the teachers, it depends on the people and whether they want to integrate in this new digital age, I would say. So I don't think it's all about putting it out there, but it's also for the people themselves, what they do with the material that they get.
But this is really interesting because I'm going to come back to Gaia's point about the book and the social media scrolling. It's not just, it's that document that you're talking about, the one which sets out how do you close a Zoom call and so on. That's also, you said yourself, they have, they don't have so much time. They're, being asked to do like so much, and also that they're just normal people too, who like at the end of the day don't feel like reading through a manual about how to set up a Zoom meeting. And so you helping them, I mean, when I say your colleagues, the fellow students, kind of showing them how to do that, that is maybe also part of the skilling process. I don't know. Or did you find that quite frustrating, that kind of?
No, I don't think it was frustrating at all, because even not just with teachers, but also with my grandparents, for example, I love teaching them like how to video call on WhatsApp. They even have an Instagram account. They asked for it themselves. And then they ask regularly, like, okay, how to do this. And then also like when I have my student job as well, there's people who don't know like on their phone where to get their client card, for example.
Yeah.
And then I think it is my duty as a younger person to teach them, but also not just to show, give me your phone here, I will do it for you, but actually teach them how to do it so that they know it in the longer run too, and repeat it multiple times, even though as a young person, you might think, come on, this is evident, like this is easy. You have to understand that for them, it's not, because they did not grow up with this. So, and same with the teacher story. Yes, indeed, they don't have time. We students, we know it. For us, it's easy. So why not point it out to them? I don't think there's anything wrong in that. So.
Interesting. Gaia, as an educator, do you feel that you've been given the support that you need, particularly with the kind of online lectures and so on? Are you happy with like the support you're getting, or is it basically just, I don't want to put you on the spot?
No. I mean, I didn't have when it comes to like technical difficulties, we have a great expert for computers and at a school, so that was never a problem, At the beginning, it was a bit funny because for example, I forgot that I should like do a setting so that children cannot like mute me. So children would mute me, and I'm like, great, because you can't know if it's like on purpose or they were being naughty or whatever. But that happened. I was like, you're still having homework, but like, good job, well done, well played. No, but I think more for me, it was more the deeper layer, like how do you adapt your teaching to the Zoom, to the like the medium of the Zoom. And that was like never discussed. I mean, maybe it was like, like 2 years ago when pandemic started, but I never got any instruction. I never got any advice, because I think it's really difficult for young teachers right now, because everybody is so busy that you don't have like a mentor. So people, if you ask them something, they will answer, but they don't give you like, this whole expertise. So yeah, no, because I think you do have to kind of adapt your style of teaching to the digital medium, right? I mean, the medium is the message and all that, which is really hard to do when you're like just developing your teaching style. So on that front, we didn't have any support now.
Yeah, no, I have really, that what you're saying really resonates with me as well. So Friends of Europe, the think tank that, this Debating Europe is a project of, we would run lots of physical events in Brussels. We'd get people to kind of come in and there'd be a panel discussion and an audience, and then you'd have people on the panel would talk, and then microphone would go down to the audience, and then you'd have the networking sessions where people would have coffee and so on. You can't do any of that online, and you can't run an online event, or I assume also a classroom. I haven't taught online, but it sounds like it's similar. You can't run it the same way as you run something offline, because it just doesn't work. Everything from attention span to kind of how people are interacting, to all the kind of things like people muting. I mean, we didn't have anyone muting participants like your students, but absolutely, I think what you're saying is is really, really interesting. We're almost out of time. I want to ask like a last question to the group again, and then we'll kind of close down and stop the recording. And then if you have any questions, we can put them together. I see lots of stuff happening in the chat, which is good. Milan, actually, maybe you want to tell us about what you're saying in the chat.
Well, it's just this cute little saying that I heard like quite some time ago that since your parents and or your grandparents showed you how to use a fork, and as Gia said, they probably had to show that to us multiple times. So the least we could do is to guide them online, is to show them how it works and how to use the internet, in general. So yeah, I believe that I already I belong to the generation which already had fortunately digitally literate teachers, at least concerning important subjects like languages, citizenship, education, etc. So yeah, that was good. We are dealing with the hoaxes and I don't know what, even in the middle school. And then it paid off, when pandemic suddenly came and people started sharing whatever. Even my mom and a part of her family believed some really, stupid things about vaccination, very unreasonable things. So yeah, I was just maybe fortunate enough to have this education, to have this skill. And I really believe, and I really want to believe that the children nowadays in our schools are getting at least the same education in this regard, and that they eventually maybe talk to their parents or grandparents like I did talk to mine about these things, and eventually also get this information to them and these skills.
I mean, this is basically the heart of this debate that we've just been having, which is, okay, so maybe I'll tell a little story. We'll finish. I'll tell you a very quick story. So I live in Maastricht in the Netherlands, and there's a bar which has opened in Maastricht recently, which is all automated. You go in and there's no barman. It's just a bunch of computers, and you go up and you have to download an app, and then you've got to kind of top it up with some credit, and then you can pour, it's all draft, so you can pour the beer. And it's all taken off your account, and it's all digital, and it's incredibly intimidating because you go in and there's no bar. You normally go to a bar, you ask, I'll have this, and it's just a bank of computers, and you're like, what are those touch screens, and what am I supposed to do? And the person who owned the bar was talking to him. I was like, aren't customers intimidated? And he said, the first time. But what he hopes happens, I don't know, he's an entrepreneur, so let's see if this works out. But what first happens to him is he's hoping that people teach each other. That the first customer comes in, figures out how it works, and then brings their friends maybe, or sees someone struggling. And of course, he's got staff who are going and telling people how to do it. But his hope is that eventually people will not just learn, but they'll teach others. And he says this happened with, I don't know if you know, if you guys have automated checkouts in the supermarket. The same thing happened there. The first time they installed the automated checkouts, everyone was like, no, I'll just stick with the cashier. But gradually people teach each other and they learn how to do it. Now, this is the question that I want to ask, the final question, and then we'll stop. Is that the right way to close the digital divide, right? To put the burden of teaching, of skilling on individuals. Is that fair? Or do you think that there could be a bigger role for governments, there could be a bigger role for NGOs? I mean, I don't know. This is kind of my question. Gaia, please.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to put a burden on individuals, because I think this is very idyllic scenario where you're like, every grandparent will have a grandchild who has all the knowledge and the opportunity and the time and the energy and the patience to teach their grandparent how to use internet safely and responsibly, especially because I don't think that the hard part is not how to open an email and then send it. The hard part is how not to fall for a hoax, or how not to send your bank information to some scam artist or whatever. And I think those things are very difficult, and that's why I think it's better if those classes for digital education or digital writing and all that exists, right? So I think that there should be more of that. They should be more popular and more widely available. Those classes, just encouraged everybody to go, because even if you're like very enthusiastic, you will probably forget to teach your grandma about something that you should actually really know. So yeah.
And another thing I might add is that we're moving. I don't know if everyone agrees. Maybe I'm speaking nonsense, but I feel like we're moving away from a model where you have to learn everything as a child, and then you keep those skills and that knowledge throughout your professional life, and then you retire, to this kind of lifelong learning approach where you have to constantly be learning, and the technology is constantly changing. So if you learn something in primary school or secondary school, it might be out of date. That technology maybe has been replaced by the time you get to your 40s or 50s. So it almost feels like whatever approach we're going to take has to be something that is following people throughout their lives. It can't just be something. I don't know if anyone wants to kind of, we're finishing, so final words. Sophie, Fotios, or Milan, do you want to kind of have a Milan, please?
Yeah, I would just like to say that currently, like most of these digital products that we use, if it's, I don't know, self-checkout, or as you said, the bar in Maastricht, like it's, or even Facebook, whatever, it's a project of entrepreneurs, of corporations. And therefore, since it's a project of a corporation or of an entrepreneur, I don't believe that it should be a burden, like, let's say, on the government. On the people, yeah, as Gail said, it's a really large burden. In an ideal society, yeah, but yeah, well, we still have a lot of work to do. But if it's a project of a corporation, well, it's up to the corporation to convince you to use their product, to maybe master it, or also to fall for it, like be completely consumed by the product. So yeah, there we go into ethics probably, etc. And I just had this one little notion that I really wanted to say, especially like about Facebook. It's a bit, controversial. A month ago, I think there was some kind of discussion that they might pull out of Europe. And out of like 100 people that I came in contact with and talked about this thing, like no one really bat an eye, no one really cared about that. And I think it's like the government or governments of Europe should in some way like respond to these corporations also abusing the lack of knowledge of people, their lack of digital literacy to profit. Like the most popular posts on Facebook are hate posts, right? Because hate is like strongest emotion. So they gain money from hate. So I don't think like this is a way of like let people like be, I don't know the expression in English for that, like to let them fall victim
Yes.
to large corporations who might
Yes.
abuse them.
No, that's really interesting, Milan. And you brought in the private sector, which we haven't talked. We've been talking about state and government and education and so on. And the private sector, clearly has a role there. What we're talking about, I guess, economists sometimes call it a kind of positive externality, like through the process of carrying out their kind of business activities, you're also teaching people how to use these digital tools, right? So that's a positive thing that could be transferable to other applications. So it might be unfair, for context rather, it might be unfair to have the private sector, expect everyone to do all the digital upskilling, with the state running it, and then to kind of gather the benefits of that. There should be a kind of sharing. The private sector has a role too, I would say, in upskilling staff, in upskilling its customers and so on, and they should be sharing the burden. I think that's a good point. And the second point you made is really depressing, which is about maybe there is a benefit in keeping people, an economic benefit in not having people be critical, be thinking critically, because that like rage and that anger, maybe it's harder to get people to engage with social media. I'll leave that there, but it's an interesting point. Fotios or Sophie, do you want to have a last word? We're going to finish, so I want to finish now. But do you have anything else that you want to add to the discussion or kind of found? No, Sophie, any last thoughts? No. Okay, we'll shut it down there, guys. That was we covered a lot, but I think we got to the heart of it, which is really, you know, there are benefits to digital, there are drawbacks, and you know, these questions about how do we navigate that digital transition, and who is going to be responsible for making sure people aren't left behind. Is it going to be the state? Is it going to be private sector? Do they have a role? Is it going to be some combination of both? And individuals? You know, I think maybe the answer is all of the above, potentially, but in what kind of configuration so that it can be fair? I think this is what I wanted to talk about today, and this is exactly what we spoke about, so I'm happy. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Thank you for watching at home. Please do kind of like and subscribe, and in the chat, in the description of the video, we'll put a link if you want to take part in a citizens panel yourself. And thank you all for your time, and hope to see you again.